and welcome to Horror Rewind. This is Kelly Florence,
And I'm Meg Hofdahl.
and today we're talking about What Lies Beneath. This is another Robert Zemeckis movie. We did one earlier this month, and it came out in the year 2000. Now, it doesn't seem like that long ago that it came out, Meg, but apparently it did.
In the year 2000. Isn't that the Conan sketch? Yeah, well, it's strange because, when you mention it, I'm like, yeah, I've seen that movie. I kind of vaguely remember it. And so, memory-wise, it's like, it was fuzzy for me when I started watching it. Then it was like, oh, okay, I remember what happens now. But, so it's like, in some ways it feels like almost 20 years, but then in other ways it's like, how is 2000 that long ago? But I guess this is just our mortality in our face again.
It is. This movie had a budget of 100 million. It made 291 million at the box office. Your husband apparently wrote a review for the local newspaper on it. We can't find it because they haven't digitized it.
Yeah, we started it and Luke said, like, oh, I wrote a review of this movie for the Mesabi Daily News up in his hometown of Virginia, Minnesota, which is cool because I did the same thing when I was a teenager. I wrote not horror, but movie reviews and music reviews for like a local paper. So I guess that's something we have in common.
That's so nice. This movie is only 46% fresh on Rotten Tomatoes, but I freaking love this movie.
It's only 46% fresh. That is an out. Wait, I was gonna say that's an outrage. Can you say that's an outrage, or I'm outraged at that? That's
I think you can say anything because it's not okay. So I was reading, and it's like, what didn't they like? And like Siskel and Ebert were like, Hitchcock would never be this blatant or something. I'm just like, you know what? Go F yourselves.
I'm not surprised those two wait. What should I call them?
Dumbbells?
I was gonna say like yeah, I was gonna say dumbbells, and then like it's funny how as when you get to be a parent, like you dull everything down. You guys know, listening to the podcast, I use the F word a lot. But it's like I'm always catching myself, so I'm always like, you dumb about something. So now I'm just completely like unable to call out what I need to call out.
Well, this movie is, like I said, directed by Robert Zemeckis. It was actually filmed on break from Castaway so Tom Hanks could have time to lose weight and grow a beard.
Well, just imagine what Tom Hanks was going through while this movie is being filmed.
Sarah Kernishen wrote a treatment. She came up with the story for this movie, and then Clark Gregg, for some reason, wrote the script, the screenplay, the actor. But you know what? I freaking love this movie.
I could go on and on and on. I'm like debating with myself if I should just like go on and on about how this movie is the perfect example of like modern gothic, and how there are so many elements in this movie that are taken straight from Victorian Gothic literature. So many elements. Like I could talk until I'm blue in the face because that's like what I'm a nerd about and I love it. And I just absolutely love how it's just feminist propaganda in gothic form, which is literally my favorite thing ever.
I'm so glad because I love this movie and I didn't know how you felt about it because like I don't think it's ever come up in conversation. But every time this movie is on, I watch it. So I've seen it probably 20 times. Like and that's obnoxious, but I love it that much.
No, I can understand why. I watched it one time with my mom, probably. I was 16, I think, in 2000. I don't think it obviously didn't hit home at that time for me. I think I watched it kind of matter of factly. Um, but now I can watch it and be like, as just recently I was writing about the female gothic, and it's like it hits every single thing down to that she lives in like this house that is not actually her home. It was her father-in-law's home. And oh my gosh, so many things. But I think the most important thing to take away from the female gothic at large, but this movie, is the likelihood that your husband is going to kill you is very small, but the likelihood that your husband is going to gaslight you, cheat on you, make you take your dream, like basically make it so you can't do your dream, all of those things, that is the thrust of womanhood even today. And that is what female gothic is about. It's about exaggerating the idea of murder and all of those things to reveal the truth of what it is to be a woman.
And just think how when these female writers back in Mary Shelley, Bronte, all of these women that ended up creating this genre, right? How they were dealing with the same things even then and saying these things in a subtle way that maybe not everybody, got to the heart of. But holy crap.
I mean, they do such a good job of Harrison Ford. I mean, he's perfectly cast because he has the classical good looks. They make sure to make him a scientist. That's very important because one of the elements of female gothic is that the guy has to be rooted in logic, and he just doesn't have any time for emotions. And Harrison Ford's just this perfect guy where he's charming, but he has that edge to him, um, where he feels and seems not awesome. And pretty soon, it doesn't take long for you to realize, like, you know, just so we all know, like, if you go and tell your husband, like, something's happening next door and, like, I'm freaked out about it, and if he laughs at you and says it's aliens, that is abuse, you know?
Yes. So there's all of these little subtle things. And that's why I just think the writing and the plot structure is so brilliant because they pepper in all of these things. And little by little, the story is revealed. And by the time you get to the end, it's all hitting you in the face. But there's this empty nest syndrome, which uh, I think we'll probably write about it in our book, but women suffer more from than men. And then there's this gaslighting. There's this possible plot of an abusive husband next door, and this backstory of the car accident that she got into, and she's been gaslit to made to believe like maybe she wanted to kill herself because she's got this memory loss. And so when you have that added element of someone else trusting someone else to fill in your memories for you, it's so icky. Can you imagine? Like it's somebody's like you had amnesia and then someone has to tell you, actually, this is how you feel about this, or this is what happened, but you don't know if you can trust them?
Well, that's the thing. That's the true horror is you want to believe that you can trust your husband, but let's be honest, not everybody can. And I don't know this idea. I think they do such a good job of, well, first of all, the empty nest thing. Um, a lot of times, women in gothic novels and movies, they are going through either they just had a baby or now in this sense, she just in a way lost a baby, because what happens is men exploit those things in our lives. And of course, I'm not talking about hashtag all men, I'm talking about many men. Exploit those times in our lives because we are emotional and rightfully so. But instead of that being okay, it's exploited to make it seem like then whatever else is going on in our lives, everything's attributed back. It's just like the period thing, it's like if you have your period, then whatever emotion you have for that week is null and void. But I think they do such a good job of showing how she used to be a musician and she used to have agency in her life. And then at one point, the guy asked, "Why did you give up being a musician?" And she's like, "Oh, I got married," is basically what she said. And that's like when, that's when a woman's all women watching it, our hearts die because it's like that's not okay, but it happens every day still in 2019.
I love that they also have, I mean, there's so much going on, but then there's this actual like creepy ghost story going on. And the way that they show the ghost and we interact with it, it's always through reflection. I mean, until we see like her dead body. But it's just the reflection of the water, and it's very subtle and so well done. And I know we were talking about Robert Zemeckis and his CGI. The CGI in this movie is all well placed and not overused.
It's subtle, and there are a lot of symbols in this reflection, the neighbors, the relationship between the neighbors next door, that's reflecting back onto Susan's, I think her name's Susan, right? Michelle Pfeiffer. We'll just call her Michelle Pfeiffer. On her marriage, and then there's literally she's using a piece of mirror. She's walking around with a piece of mirror, and then there's water. Water is a huge symbol in this movie. And I mean, you could write many papers, I'm sure, about what it means. I don't know. It would only be a guess to me, maybe about cleansing or there's lots of different things. And but you have to admit that water is like a huge part of this movie.
Absolutely. And I like the foreshadowing. They have the foreshadowing. She's going to the lab, and we learn about the agent, the paralyzing agent being used on the mice. They foreshadow um, about the cell phone not working until the middle of the bridge. They she finds this key, but it doesn't really come into play until the very, last act of the movie. So it's just all these little hints thrown in, and we're not really sure what everything means, but it all comes into play. It's such good writing, and then there's these nods to Hitchcock, like she's watching the neighbor guy who apparently was in the movie White Fang. Shout out to Mark. She's watching her neighbor guy with her binoculars, the shower curtain being torn down at the end. I mean, there's probably more Siskel and Ebert we're mad about, but you know what? I freaking loved it.
I I'm not surprised those two white dudes didn't like it. Oh well. Um, and so what if something's a little bit heavy-handed? It's a good message. So if that's their complaint about it, then fuck them. But yeah, yeah, actually, and I think even in the score, I felt like there's a little bit of psycho music at the
And his name is Norman.
Oh, right, and his name's Norman. So I think that the true like the best horror, obviously the ghost part is kind of cool and kind of creepy. And I like how they kept the ghost part because again, it's very much rooted in the female gothic tradition where there's a female ghost who is tied to the male in some way and has to do with his own guilt and his own past. I mean, just think about Jane Eyre, and also the fact that the woman is always right in these books and these movies where the guy can gaslight her all he wants, but at the end of the day she's right. um and of course, I mean, just the title, What Lies Beneath, oh, it's fascinating. I could go on and on, but the horror aspect that you were talking about, the paralytic agent, that's amazing. I love that. I remembered that happened. I was like, oh yeah. And her being in the bathtub and saving herself, and to imagine what it would be like to be paralyzed and have your husband like murdering you, which I mean, let's be honest, it's happened. Maybe not exactly like that, I'm sure, but women have unfortunately come to the conclusion much far too late that their husband's murdering them. And then to go on further and have the fight in the water, and then in true gothic fashion, the ghost is, or the body of the missing girl is there, and it was just so, oh my god. And then the key. Anytime there's like a key and a fucking like old box to open, I get so freaking excited.
I am going to keep going on. So, you were mentioning, Harrison Ford, he's not going to believe his wife. And he's even goes so far as to make fun of her in front of these friends at dinner. And it's just like, you dick. And then the next scene, of course, she's at the psychiatrist or the therapist because, her husband sent her there. And it's a really nice, it's well written scene. It's subtle. But then she just says, there's a bit of a beat, and she says, there's a ghost in my house. She just says it matter of factly, and I have chills. I have chills.
Yeah, and this is what happens is, she goes to a man of science and says this stuff's happening, and he doesn't like it, even though of course, the great irony is he's the one who's causing all of these problems. So he sends her to another man of science. And then soon she only feels comfortable in the female sphere where she can talk to her friend about it. And she literally has a book about witchcraft. So literally only the feminine aspect of her life. And her daughter's gone now, so she's lost a lot of her like sort of feminine power at home, and she's been put in a position where her life consists of laundry and playing solitaire because she was there to be his perfect wife, yet he's never home because he's off cheating on her. So all this comes together in this culmination, and this is what happens. And of course, the true scare of it all is that all of those things I just listed are people's lives. Like the ghost is not real, the murder happens, not frequently, but all this other stuff is, like I said, that's the truth about being a woman and getting stuck in a situation like that. And it happens, I'm sure, if it's not happening to you listening to this, I'm sure you know somebody like that.
Speaking of the feminine and this female friendship, I love her friend so much. She is written really well. She's funny, she's real. They have this séance together with the Ouija board, and that whole scene is done really well because you don't know really yet what's happening. The dog ends up opening one of the doors. Like you said, her friend brings her the witchcraft book. Everything is revealed so well. And then when she goes over there and tells her about the story about how she saw Norman like having lunch and having a fight with this other woman, even that, it's like, do we tell our friends something that we know is going to break their heart, or do we try to protect them? And it's so many layers and levels of realness and horror.
And then take the difference between how her friend was considering her and how her husband was considering her. Her friend was like, I don't know what I should do. Should I tell her? And then she got in this car accident, and I didn't want to, like, start stuff about him cheating on her. And her husband, I mean, literally makes fun of her.
And then he puts it back on himself. He's like, "Don't you're just trying to do this because of my paper."
Oh yeah, that was awful when she came in and she was like really upset, and he was like, this is about me. Everything's about me. So I mean, they did they did a great job. And I mean, I absolutely love it. Any sort of modern telling of a gothic sort of sensibility like that, I'm there. I loved it.
And they even had him be subtly jealous of the daughter. He's like, "Oh, you just gave it all to her. Like you just love her." And now that she's not here, so he's even jealous of the love that, a mother should have for her daughter.
Yeah, I mean, this is a type of guy that exists in the world, unfortunately, and operates through the world. And I like how they kind of gave him this complex of like daddy issues. Doesn't excuse him being an asshole, but it's kind of interesting. Um, and kind of this idea too of female togetherness, because also this girl that he, or woman that he was cheating with, left that box for his wife to tell her, like, this is what's up, like, and of course he kept putting her in the box of that she's hysterical and she's going to ruin everything and she's emotional. And it's just a fascinating thing that I think will never get old, because being a woman changes. Obviously, I'm glad I live now, but at the end of the day, we still have our issues.
Yeah, and like what you were talking about, he keeps putting it back on her. Like he did this for her, and it's to save her and their relationship. And all he ever wanted was for her to be happy. So this is why he's doing it for her. And it's like, well, there's a lot of things you could have not done to not get to that point. There's a really nice scene too when she goes to visit Madison. That's the girl that woman that her husband was cheating with. She goes to visit the mother, and that scene was quiet, and she's got her soap opera on, muted, and she's got her cat, and it just felt really. It was like it was again another reflection, another foil of look, my daughter's gone too for a different reason, but this life of solitude and purpose.
And now I'm sitting in this house, and what do I do? Um and that's unfortunately what happens to a lot of women, is that this emptiness syndrome comes along because they were raised to be wives and mothers, which is a noble cause, and I'm very proud to be a wife and a mother. But unfortunately, a lot of women get in a situation of that's what they have devoted their life to. At the very beginning of the movie, we see her stop and fix a lamp. And it's such a subtle little thing, the Michelle Pfeiffer. Which, by the way, side note, like, her cheekbones and her jawline,
And
like,
her eyes, she's so beautiful.
she was meant to be a movie star, and she's also very talented. But anyway, just this concept of a wife and mother, and there's nothing wrong with that. But oftentimes, when the children leave the nest, women are left to their own devices. And if they haven't been able to, if they've been with somebody who doesn't promote and assist them in their dreams, and they live in a partnership, then life can go downhill really fast. And I think it's something that's not explored enough. I think so often these horror movies are about younger women, but this is a time in a woman's life that many of us are going to face. And I just think it's fascinating to explore it in this movie.
That's why, let's be wise, let's be mothers, but let's also make sure that we're pursuing our own hobbies and dreams. And it doesn't mean you have to go out and get a job. Maybe you're going to be stay at home, and that's fine. But have another hobby or another like besides your kids and your husband because we all need that.
Yeah, I mean, even if it's something as simple as like just joining a book club or starting an Etsy shop and doing crafts or whatever. But yeah, I think that that was kind of a big aspect of this. And again, the foil and the reflection when she's concerned about the woman next door, she peeks in and she's playing solitaire too. And what a poetic game to be playing. Their husbands are gone. Their husbands are these like powerful intellectuals, and here they are playing solitaire, yet they are powerful intellectuals. As Madison was, as her mother said, she was extremely intelligent, and look what happened to her because she got in a man's way.
Ugh. I'm so glad, Meg, that you enjoyed this movie as much as I do because I just feel so strongly. I just want to hug it.
Yeah, no, it's like I said, it's feminist propaganda, and I love it.
Should we rank this movie? I mean, we could go on, but we probably shouldn't because this has turned into a lecture. But we love you all for listening.
If you're still listening. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I felt like I was like, that's another thing that's in Gothic literature. That's another thing. And then I just like felt like I could like just vomit it all out. And I was like, actually, maybe nobody wants to hear about that, but I'm gonna talk about it. So what are we rating on?
Well, don't you think it should be the key? Because like I wrote that down, like the box and with the symbol, and it's the same symbol as on her necklace, and like, like just inject this into my veins.
Oh, that's the dream. Like, I don't want to find a box that like proves that my husband's a murderer, but I would just love to find like an old antique key in the vent of my house and like have to figure out where it goes. That'll be my hobby.
Oh yes. Okay, so antique keys, 0 being you hated it, 10 being you think it's a perfect movie. How many keys do you give What Lies Beneath?
As I was watching it, I was thinking 9, but then after this gushing about it, I'm like, why wouldn't I just give it a 10? I don't understand why. What was I docking a point for? Like, it's amazing actors. It's creepy. I mean, she's freaking paralyzed in the bathtub and she saves herself. Like, this is the shit that we love.
I too was like, okay, I better hold myself back and give it a 9. But then as I was talking, I'm like, no, literally, there's nothing I didn't like. If there's anything I didn't like, it's because the husband's an asshole, but that because he's supposed to be and he was written so well. It's a 10. 10 antique keys. This movie.
And might I add that a lot of times in Gothic literature and movies, the husband who's an asshole, he often ends up getting the girl anyway, like Jane Eyre, like Rebecca, the brooding.
Spoiler alert much. Just kidding.
um, but but here it was like, no, it's not charming. It's not charming that he's a brooding asshole. It's he's a bad guy. And so not that I'm not saying I hate Mr. Rochester or anything. I'm just saying that it's a refreshing modern take on it.
Yes. Horror Rewind listeners, if you haven't seen What Lies Beneath lately or ever, run out and watch it. It was on Prime, on Amazon Prime. I'm sure you can find it in other places, but what an excellent movie. And yeah, Michelle Pfeiffer, I mean, I've loved her a lot for a long time, but I loved her as Catwoman. Did you watch that movie as much as I did?
I definitely did. And I don't know, I think she's a little underrated. Like, I think she's so gorgeous that maybe people don't realize how talented she is, but I think she's a really good actress, and I'd like to see more of her. I know I heard Luke talking about how she was an Ant-Man too. I forgot about that, but I would just like to see her in more things. And I guess, I don't know, Harrison Ford, like, what's he been doing? Crashing planes? Like, is he in things?
Well, he was in that Star Wars movie, I guess.
I guess.
He's fine. It doesn't matter. I mean, we don't need to worry about him. The thing I always used to say, and I said it the other day, but it's not even true. Would come into the house and say, "Honey, I'm home. Oh, I forgot, I'm not married." Like from Batman Returns. Is that the one that she's in? Yeah. But I just think I just love that line and how it says hello there, and then she smashes it, and it says hell here, like Catwoman.
Yeah, Catwoman. I loved Batman Returns. Oh my God, I loved her, and she was so perfect. She was bad, and like, oh yeah, I kind of want to watch that again.
I know. Okay, yeah, we've got things to watch. So until next time, rewinders, we will see you in the horror section.